Where do you want me to be? You to be then?
I'm gonna be right here. You have tea here. Do you want it over there?
Sure.
Okay.
It worked well putting the mattress from below up here.
I'm so grateful that you got a really good night's sleep.
I am too.
I did too. Mocha got me up once.
Mocha got up once. So I woke up at 4, wanted to go to bed about 9.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to me that the last 2 nights, since we've made the decision, I have gotten a full night's sleep. And it's almost like my body is saying, yes, you know that this decision needs to be made, and I'm not going to torture you right up to the very end, so maybe you can get some stuff done.
Yeah.
And I just love that when I woke up at 4 again today, and so I have a little bit of energy.
I'm so grateful.
Does this take away from the spontaneity of conversation? Maybe a little bit.
A little bit. But, you know, we just have to forget it's on.
Okay. But there are some things that I wanted to talk about, and if I don't get them written down, then at least they'll be here.
Mm-hmm.
But I had such an illuminating conversation with a friend of mine who is also a doula, and she lives in New York City. And we were talking about liver cancer and the symptoms because we did the course together, so we were both very familiar with VSEDs, and that we knew that that would be horrible for a patient to have to go through. And she reminded me today that she was Allen Ginsberg's maid, and for years that he lived in a compound there in the village near where she was, and that he died of liver cancer. And she says, it's so funny to me that you're talking about VSEDs, because I was doing the dishes and I was there that last night before he died, and him and his best friend were there, and they had their hands on his stomach, and the VSEDs was very bad, and they were just massaging it, and Alan was saying, it's just the next adventure. She goes, he was just so comfortable with exiting this world. And she said when she went to work the next day, he was gone. And so I wanted to talk to her. I said, tell me more about the VSEDs. And she goes, well, you know, his stomach had gotten really big, and I go, you know, this is the beauty of my walk, because we know that this is coming for me, and we see it coming. And in fact, last night, because like for the last month, it's like, you know, if my stomach was feeling a little bloated, I go, VSEDs? And he'd say, oh, let's not say that word, you know. And then it's kind of like
we were doing some avoidance.
We were doing some avoidance, and then it's like I'm doing the physical therapy, you know, and I'm doing fucking 30 squats, and thinking, oh, my stomach's, you know, getting flat again, you know. But then the VSEDs is coming in, and then I'm calling for VSED, and I said to Greg, I go, don't worry, I go, it's not that I can't live in the world without a flat stomach. And we had a laugh about...
You're just tired of doing squats.
Tired of doing squats. Tired of doing everything pretty much in this world at this point. But I said to Lori, I go, it's interesting that I get to report to you what that feels like. Because I didn't investigate cancer. I didn't investigate much in life. I met it pretty much as I met it. And so I wasn't going to let people scare me with it. And I was still operational in my life. And so when I talked with Shayna about the morphine not being processed in the liver, it made me really realize that now I'm not producing bile, there's not, digestion's not going on, and a lot of things are starting to happen fast. And so this is why I've been feeling this constipation and stuff, is that I'm not processing the food. And I told her, I said, I just want to get this out there to families that are at the bedside with people, force feeding them for their own selfish reasons, because they want them to stay in the world. And I told her, I said, it was that night that I reached out to Greg about getting VSED started, at least on an energetic level, because I feel like I have a shelf right underneath my chest. And all the food that I'm eating just kind of lays right there. And it'll dissipate during the day and cause me mischief and stuff, but I don't release it. I don't eliminate it. And so I go, so I'm seeing just how the ascites does grow. And it's a painful experience, and I'm sorry that Alan had to go through that, but I can avoid that. And also realizing that now that my symptoms are speeding up like they are, that this cancer would probably have me in quite a bit of pain in about 3 months. And so how beautiful that this came into the world. The doula course came into the world. I heard this word. I learned it. And now I'm getting to practice it. And possibly, if other people that are bound in beds in their life, and they know what their life is, they know who's traveling around their bedside, and this is an option for them. So I'm really hoping that it goes well. So, somebody else might want to try it, because I tell you what, if you have lived a full life and coming up to where we are right now, this is the most beautiful place to be, to have lived your whole life with someone and to have them love and understand your life enough that they can release you and help you along the way without grasping and holding on.
Well, and it's beautiful too how your body's been informing you of what you need to do. When I was listening to Suzanne O'Brien's podcast with the woman who did VSED with her husband, and they were saying, it's important, 5 days to a week prior to reduce your caloric intake, so that your body doesn't have severe reactions to stopping eating. And your body's been calling for that here progressively over the last few weeks, to lower your caloric intake, because it caused you so much distress to eat. So by listening to your body, you've intuitively gleaned all of this information that, other people are having to be informed of. And that has been one of the most beautiful things for me to be a part of and to learn from you, Patty, is that if we listen, all the information is there. We don't have to be so hungry to inform ourselves through media and books, that we really need to spend more time just listening to what the universe, what Spirit tells us. And you've taught me that so well.
Well, it's been a lifetime. Well, we learned it together, dude, man.
But you perfected it.
We've been rolling out these conditions since, North Miami, with, your first thing with polyps, colon polyps.
Oh, okay, colon cancer.
And so I'm sitting in the waiting room, and the doctor walks in and gives me this film and says, Here, this is a picture of, this is like in the 80s, right? Here's a picture of Greg's colon. He was sure that you would want to see it. So he took it home and put it on the fridge. But, you know, Greg has had his myriad of illnesses, and then with us in the Bahamas and the hepatitis C and anaphylactic seizures, and then coming here with each of us having our own cancer and heart, we have nursed and carried one another. We have shown up for one another in all of these illnesses, wanting to help, being a part of the other rising. We didn't realize that that was building a muscle. We've been building a muscle of care. And even in the life when there was emotional turmoil and things, maybe we felt we were, you know, overlooked or whatever. Whenever anything was needed on a deep level between two humans, we were there. And it's what kept carrying us through the other stuff. And so then we had about 33 years of that, interesting number, before the shit hit the fan and we were to realize that life was not as rosy as we had thought it was. It'd been pretty rosy for us, but not for many. And that was where we stayed for the last 2 years to try and understand the world a little bit better. And I'm glad that people are reaching out and telling me that they've learned from me. My friend Lori was so beautiful. She goes, I don't want to let you go. She goes, I want you up on that mountaintop, just shouting to all of us what you see. And that just, you know, when we left on our trip on Tortuga, and we were coming up here, and we were getting out of Ketchikan, and we were walking away from the visuals that lit us up the most in our life, but getting away from the visuals of the emotional stuff that was part of what drove us out of there. And I felt more alive. I felt more alive because we were in control of our life. And my neighbor Linda's saying, you know what? We are all so proud of you. And we got up here. And so we're on the ferry. And it's the beginning of the journey. And a woman walks in, Diane Weston, I think. And I come in to the room, to the amphitheater, or to sit by the window to look at sea. And she's sitting on the other side of the room. And I walk in the room and I sit down. And I don't see her really until she's sitting next to me. And so she sits next to me and we have this conversation. And at some point I asked her, I said, do you feel your life force leaving? I've never asked anybody that before. And she said, I do. And we had such a deep conversation.
That was such a beautiful exchange.
It was a beautiful exchange, and I've never talked to her since. She shared with me that her and her brother had had such a traumatic childhood that when she ended up back in Ketchikan to find the tree was still there that her and him would meet at to hug, carve their initials in. That just spoke to me. And so she said to me, she goes, when you walked in this room, she goes, you had so much light around you. Mm-hmm. I just had to come and sit next to you. So it was a beginning, or maybe the middle, I don't know. People starting to say things to me that were just gorgeous. And that's kind of how I feel now too. Is if you were to look at me, you would see that my life force is leaving. That's why I had Greg take that picture yesterday, because I felt so sassy and cute. My friend Laura said, can you see your aura? And I guess that's what it is, huh? Because the way I'm meeting this. But I thought, oh yeah, let's see if we can get Beauty down to the beast here before she goes. But I don't think I got enough time for that. You know, but to be walking out of my life before the pain hits me, still loving my life, and but not grasping at it.
When you say when the pain hits you, that's such a relative term, and realizing the massive pain threshold that you have. I'll never forget sitting in the orthoped's office in Ketchikan after you broke your pelvis in 3 places, and him coming in with the scans and the missing discs and fused vertebrae, and then I'm seeing cracked vertebrae and the ends broken off of vertebrae, and we're both thinking that he's got a scan of my back because we know it's a train wreck, but he's like, no, this is Patty, and when did you break your back? And we're looking at each other in utter confusion because you had some falls that were pretty, blisteringly.
Yeah, I guess I do have a. I do.
You had a massive pain threshold that you never sought medical attention for a broken back is kind of epic, and
So maybe
you've
that's
maintained mobility.
More validation to me being a primordial, because we didn't run to the doctors, did we?
No.
We didn't, and we never really did run to the doctors. We didn't until your dad came to live with us, and then we had to start taking him to the doctor, and then we started seeing doctors, and that's how we found out that I had hepatitis C.
I was never big on seeing doctors until I started bleeding out of my ass.
Right, and so yes, this is just a beautiful thing. And to take a picture of my hospital bed, which I posted today, and it's like, I got up and made it, and it's like, and I'd like to do as much for myself as I can. And so, this is going to be an interesting journey for us as well. And, but you can see the partnership here where in this walk, Greg has got such an ability to discern information, And so whenever anything came on board in our family, it was like he was right on it and finding solutions and just so stirring up the energy. I didn't even really see it as that then, but just stirring up the energy to bring in more energy and more information. And so there's been so much information around us. And once we were standing in the kitchen in Ketchikan, and we were looking out at the ocean, and it's like so many things we've talked about, as we kayak into the wilderness or skate together or just out because we spent so much time together. He would waft these ideas that he had. And, and it was like, they were like exciting, but they were like H.G. Wells kind of shit, and then later on you'd see that it was in the world. And it's like, oh, shit, we should have patented that. We should have done some work on that, It's in the world. And so we're standing by the window and looking at the ocean and saying, what are we, receivers? Are we, what's the other one? Receivers, whatever, generators, because so much information has been around us. And then you think about the hidden messages in water and what one water molecule holds.
The
and
information was so vast, just in a water molecule. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this exploration of consciousness. And, does it exist internally or externally? And, the answer is both and everywhere and everything and all at once. That, again, intuitively arriving at a place that science is just now catching up with proving, and so many others, arrived here before, but it just feels like you've put all these pieces together to get to this point just so beautifully. It's
We wanted to do this recording this morning because yesterday, we cried and we laughed and
yeah, I know
so,
it.
So
this
much,
isn't the same, but
so much was said, and I know that this isn't the same, and we probably won't do this again. But I'm glad that we have this because our mornings around the yurt campfire and especially lately here have just been illuminating enough to want to share because time is running out and we realize that it takes two for this part of the journey where it's not me and it's not him. He'll say something and then I will say something and then it opens up this whole new idea. My friend sent me a text. Me, my father who said I was shallow, me who was never accomplished anything. She goes, you have taught me how to have different ideas. You've just brought me out of the normal realm and it's like, wow. That's great. So, and all the little pieces that came to us to let us know that we can handle this, like knowing about the hidden messages in water and when knowing that water carries all the information. I even said to Greg the other day, I go, I always hated it that I wet my bed for 12 years. I go, now I see it as a gift because it was the shame of that made me leave my family. How can my family start off being so, making fun of me and stuff? And it's something I didn't even have any, whatever. We all know what that feels like in the family, but it's like, that showed me that the water has been running through me since the beginning of time. And that's what that means. I laughed with Lori today and she goes, I go, who knew? I go, who knew this was coming to me, all this light? I go, a girl that wet her bed and picked her nose and even ate it. They thought I was simple. We had such a fun conversation this morning and we cried and laughed too. And then we had the best guffaw. And then I said, let's say goodbye on a guffaw. And we did. And I'll carry her with me forever. And Lori, people that sexual abuse showed up for me to try and understand it. So here's this beautiful woman that comes in my life whose sister who died because she had been, and it was in a time when no one reported it and it never got processed. And her children still carry that pain. And she sees that in their life. And we talk and we share and we cry. And this is what it takes to be close to me. And the ones that thought they were close to me that aren't now, it's because they weren't able to be that with me. And I get it. I see it.
I almost couldn't. It's the messaging of our society tells us to be strong, to bury it deep. And, even that article that I glazed over the other day that talking about repression as a coping tool and how bullshit that messaging is, that we cannot express how we feel. We can't be vulnerable because we don't want anyone to think we're weak. And this really kind of dovetails with those conversations that we had about the vocabulary of disease and death and dying, that it's about failure and losing and just, it's all about a fight and who wins and who loses.
Every second.
And isn't that why all this messaging to suppress everything bad that's happened, your vulnerabilities, because you don't want anybody to think you're losing? I mean, I think of, young Tom standing there trying to understand this and just repeating over and over, can't you see we're winning here? We're winning. And his family is falling apart, but financially, socially, you're here. And it's not their fault, but we're all subjected to this messaging
and it wasn't your fault. And it wasn't your fault.
It wasn't my fault.
Because you got more messaging from the privileged society than most that you had to break through.
Yeah.
And so to be here, for us to be here now, is just the most beautiful thing, because we are about shedding light on the original family. And that, I know it's kind of hard to hear, and that's why people are probably glad I'm going some, but you know, I'm
not all.
Come on, it's like, take your mask off. Really, take your mask off on how you feel at those family gatherings. And are you paying attention to the kids? Are you over in the corner drinking your beers with whatever? And are you interacting with your family? And how are your kids seeing you in your life? And if you're a mother and you're not being treated well by your husband, your kids are seeing that. And they're going to take that into their life. And they're probably going to expect that that may happen to them. I wonder about my granddaughter, whose mother now has cancer, because she didn't process something. And I'm wondering, does my granddaughter think that that is her path as well? I don't know. Nobody's communicating about their wounds. And so I guess I had to wake up, and then I just started lobbing grenades, not knowing what I was doing. But now that I'm at that finish line, I am so grateful for everyone that I loved, because I know that it leaves some shaking a little bit in their shoes, but at least more people are going to ask questions when they honestly admit to themselves they are not living their best life. And I got to live my best life most of my life. I got to do an adventure and experience. And so when something is in the world that attacks you on a deep level that had impacted your own behaviors, it will affect you. And so I knew that I was supposed to shed some light here. And it's funny too, I'm going to stop talking in a second. But when I did that first doula course, and the first hospice, the first grief workshop I did, I helped facilitate 2. And so we had a lot of beautiful paperwork to share with the people. And there was one passage in there called The Meaning of Life. And I loved it, and I just always went back to it. And it was about a soldier who was in the war, and he found it, and he was in the, those dugouts or whatever, and so scared, and he found a little piece of glass. To entertain himself, he'd take that glass and he'd be making light, shining light in dark places. And then as a man, as he grew up, he remembered that soldier, and he realized that that was his passion, was to shine light in dark places. And I loved that man for knowing that and wanting that. I didn't know I was that man. And so I'm realizing that now. If you love something so deeply, explore it, because you are that. And let it be light-filled. And if it isn't, turn around. The end.
The beginning.
The beginning.